What's going on, family? Hey, it's Manny Arango. Welcome to the Manny Arango Ministries YouTube channel. So glad that you clicked on this video. I'm going to kind of introduce this topic today. This is probably going to end up being a two-part video because, to be totally honest, I don't see how I'm going to talk about this topic all in one video. I want to frame our discussion by saying this. As a preacher, as a pastor, as a communicator, as an entrepreneur, I'm only as good as my last really brilliant idea. I want to say that again. I'm only as good as my last brilliant idea. And that last idea may have been a sermon. It may be an initiative for a discipleship program at my church. That last idea may be a new product. That last idea may be a job description. Whatever category an idea falls into, I'm only as good as my last most brilliant idea. Which means if you are a preacher, a communicator, a salesman, a leader, a pastor, a bishop, an apostle, an entrepreneur, your greatest value lies right in between your two ears. Your brain, your mind, your creativity is why you get paid the money that you get paid to fix problems, to bring creative solutions to problems. So today, I'm gonna get into some of the rhythms and the science that I have found to help me continue to generate great ideas. If you're not subscribed to this channel, how about you subscribe now? Man, we try to bring really good practical ministry tools to leaders. So whether that ministry tool comes in the way of preaching advice or pastoral advice or leadership advice or theology advice, we're always trying to equip the leaders of God's church and Christians all around the world. So how about you subscribe? How about you share this video with a friend? You are as good as your last most brilliant idea. And we need the brilliance that God has placed inside of your mind. And so this mind that you have, it's the mind of Christ. It doesn't belong to laziness or to fogginess or to the enemy. Actually, we need you to be sharp because you're always having to give amazing ideas. In this video, I'm gonna give you 5 tools to continue to create great ideas, and I'm actually gonna give you some book recommendations because one of the best things that I've done to invest into my own creativity is actually to read about creativity. So let's get into these tools. Number 1, if you are going to create great ideas, okay, or to create awesome content, then you actually need to be consuming great content. So step number 1 for remaining sharp is that if you're gonna create great content, you're gonna consume great content. So this first point, I don't want anyone to get confused between the first point and my second point. My first point is about quality. Quality. One of the first things that our last filmmaker at the church that I go to, that I work at, World Overcomers Christian Church, we had a filmmaker a couple years ago. His name was Mark Camel. Brilliant artist, brilliant content creator. He was on staff with us for a couple of years, and in that time he grabbed a couple of interns who had no film experience, no video experience, and one of the first things that he did is he gave them some filmmakers and just said, I want you to watch all their films. Because if I'm gonna require that you create great high quality content, you first have to consume great high quality content. So leader, preacher, pastor, here's a question. Are you consuming crap content? Because if you're consuming crap, you're gonna create crap. One of the best things that you could do, even as a preacher, is actually to change your palate. You've been listening to bad sermons, you're probably gonna preach bad sermons. Just how it is. A lot of preachers preach a lot like the pastor that they emulate or the pastor that is in their local congregation. And so you may have to be really picky about the content you consume if you're gonna try to change the kind of content you create. Now, my second point is really similar but different. In the first point, we're talking about the quality of the content. You're gonna have to consume great quality photographs if you're gonna produce great quality photography. Well, whatever your field is, you're gonna have to consume the high level content in order to create high level content. So that first point is all about quality. Here's the second point though. It's about quantity. If you're gonna create a lot of content, you've got to consume a lot of content, all right? So our first point, we're focusing on quality, okay? Quality. Second point, we're focused on quantity. I want to give you this analogy or this example. Imagine you go into a gym, all right, and you see somebody on the bench press and they are just throwing weights up. They're on the bench press, they're just killing it, they're crushing it. Typically, I know I've seen this in gyms a lot. They're cranking out at a high volume, but somewhere near them is like a gallon of water. And typically in that gallon of water, the water is like pink or blue because they've put amino acids in that water. And somewhere in a duffel bag is some protein powder. Why? Because they understand that in order to, their output has to be replenished by their input. So the same works with your creativity. If you have to give 52 sermons in a year because there are 52 weeks in a year, or you've got to think through 12 sermon series because you do one sermon series a month, then I hope that you're not just consuming great content, but you're consuming a lot of content because your intake has to match your output. One of the habits that I developed really early on, especially as I started traveling and preaching, was that when I'd be done preaching at a conference, instead of going to my hotel room and watching Netflix, like preaching is something that's so depleting. Instead of going back to my hotel room and eating Doritos and just watching Netflix, I'd actually watch a sermon. Every time I preach a sermon, I'd watch a sermon. If I preach a sermon, I'd watch a sermon. Why? Because I realize that if I'm emptying myself on stage, I then have to do what? Fill myself back up. So that's not just about the quality. You need to consume quality content, but you also need to be consuming quality content in large quantities or in equal quantities as you're expected to produce great content. Number 3. I've got my notebook right here. One of the other things that you need to do is figure out when you are creative. When are you creative? You know, I'm creative, oddly enough, I'm creative early in the morning and I'm creative late at night. That's just my rhythm. My brain, not just when I'm creative, but also where I'm creative. Man, a lot of my most brilliant ideas have happened driving or in the shower. So you need to kind of capture when you're creative. I actually spend those times in the morning and the night consuming content. Right now, especially during quarantine, I've got a rhythm. I consume book or written content in the morning and I consume video content at night. That's my rhythm. It works for me because I know once I've consumed my morning written content, I'll be able to kind of create some or produce some content or some ideas. And at night, as soon as I'm done watching something, either a documentary or something that's just like really beautiful, like image driven content or visual content, I then start thinking about what kind of visual content I'm going to create. So that's just my rhythm, but you need to figure out when and where you are creative. That influences when I have meetings. So I'll give you a little life hack. I don't really schedule morning meetings. Why don't I schedule morning meetings? Because I'm creative in the mornings. In the moment, my time isn't all equal. A meeting with me at 9 o'clock in the morning and a meeting with me at 5 o'clock in the evening, those 2 hours, although they are both 60-minute denominations of time, aren't worth the same to me. My 9 o'clock hour is actually worth more based on what I can accomplish at that time. And so the same reason that airlines are not going to sell you a flight for the same price, even if it's a different day? Well, because one is on peak time and one's off peak time. So for me, I have to value my time in the same way. I have to know what's peak season for me, what's the peak time of the day for me, and I really shouldn't be having breakfast with you. I should be capturing my creativity, and you've got to know your rhythms in order to make informed decisions about how you are going to spend your time. Number 4, if you're creative on a team, then everyone on the team has to know their team dynamics and roles. When I was a youth pastor, everyone knew I was the writer and everyone on the team were like editors. So I would bring some nerdy philosophical idea to the table, and my wife, Anthony Lewis, so many other people on our team would help shape that idea and make it consumable to teenagers, or make it palatable, or make it trendy, or make it cool. But they knew Manny is gonna come with a raw idea. His idea is gonna be in raw form. That just means it's unprocessed. It's not for public consumption yet. It's a raw idea. He's got some theological, nerdy idea, and we are here to edit that idea and to make it palatable. See, because everyone knew their role, we were actually able to create chemistry and brainstorm like a team. If you create in teams, or if you lead teams that are needing to be creative, then everyone's kind of have to know their role on that team. You know, what's the role of the graphic designer? What's the role of your tech person who's looking at things behind the scenes? What's the role of your worship leader? What's the role of everyone on the team? And actually, I find that when a team has great chemistry, we're actually able to crank out ideas. And once we're on a roll, we don't stop just because there's another meeting. Actually, we have to structure our organization so that if we brainstorm and we find ourselves in a flow, man, that flow, I want to maximize that flow, which means this brainstorming session may be 2 hours, it may be 3 hours. And I found actually that if I get into a flow, I can write 3, 4, 5 sermons right after the other, right after the other, right after the other. If I'm in a flow and we're thinking through sermon series, I can, if it's dry, hey, let's stop. We're not having chemistry right now. This isn't working. Let's just move on to something that doesn't require creativity. But when we are creative, when we hit a creative like wave, you ride it. You don't stop just because it's lunch. You don't stop just because there's another meeting scheduled. No, you keep everyone in the room and you milk it until that thing is empty. So, team dynamics, big deal when it comes to creativity. The last thing that I want to focus on when it comes to creativity is knowing whether you're extroverted or introverted. Extroversion and introversion isn't about whether or not you're social. Every human being is social. As we've learned during the quarantine, my wife is an introvert and she's craving just wanting to be around people, all right? Everyone's social. That's not what extroversion and introversion are about. Introversion and extroversion are about how you gain energy. Do you gain energy being around people? That means you're an extrovert. Do you gain energy being alone? That means you're an introvert. Well, my energy is gonna dictate how I'm able to be creative. You know, me and my pastor, we're so different. We both preach, we both come up with sermon series and sermon ideas, and we have to come up with creative solutions for our organization at different levels, but we still have to be creative all the time. And for him, he's an introvert. So he loves hunting because hunting means he can be alone up in a tree thinking through his ideas. He can write sermons up in a tree. I mean, at the crack of dawn, he's up in a tree waiting for deer. He loves to hunt. Man, if I'm alone for too long, my creativity withers, it dies. So I actually need to be social to feed my energy so that I can then retreat and be creative. I get ideas by being around people. Conversation sparks my creativity. And I have to jot things down. Sometimes when I'm around people, my wife says things like, hey, put your phone down. But what she doesn't realize is that no, being around people is feeding my energy, and I'm using that energy to be creative, and I'm writing down ideas. Because we may be on a double date, and what this wife or this husband said just made me think of my next sermon series or my next big idea. And so ideas are always happening, you've got to know how to ride the wave. So number one, you've got to consume great content. The quality of the content matters. If you listen to bad sermons, you're going to preach bad sermons. If you like bad tasting food, you're going to cook bad tasting food. I mean, it just is what it is. Your palate is probably the problem, okay? So you've got to fix your palate. And this isn't a style thing, it's a quality thing. It doesn't matter what style, like T.D. Jakes and Judah Smith preach different styles. Tim Keller and, Tim Keller and Christine Kane preach different styles, but I like all of them. This is not about style, it's actually about quality. Your style can be totally different, but the quality is incredible. So you gotta consume great content. Number two, you gotta consume a lot of content. Number three, you've got to figure out when and where you're creative and put yourself in those spaces and guard those times as holy. Number four, you got to figure out your team dynamics and the team roles. Who are the writers on your team? Who are the editors on your team? Who are the people that come with raw ideas? Who are the people that know how to navigate those raw ideas and make them consumable, or they know how to commercialize those ideas? Number five, you got to know whether or not you're an extrovert and an introvert and use that for your advantage. If you're an introvert and you know that you're creative when you're by yourself, but you keep saying yes to hanging out with people, then you're never going to maximize on your genius. You're a genius when you're by yourself. So stop succumbing to the pressure to hang out with everybody. You got to use your extroversion or your introversion for your benefit. So those are some tips for how to come up with great ideas. In the next video, I'll talk about some books that have helped me to be creative. One of those is called The War of Art. Absolutely incredible book. The other one is called Steal Like an Artist. The other one is called The Accidental Creative. These are books that I just found right here, like in my book collection. There's two whole other stacks that I'll talk about in the next video, and I'll go in depth on why they're in different stacks and what each stack has to offer. If you are, again, if you're a preacher, pastor, leader, entrepreneur, you are only as good as your last batch of brilliant ideas. You are only as good as your last batch of brilliant ideas. And you want to continue to bring a fresh batch of brilliant ideas to your team. I know that my team, they're depending on me. The people who are on my payroll, the people who at one point used to volunteer for me when I was in local church ministry, man, those people are dependent on me to have brilliant ideas, because my ideas are moving our organization forward. My ideas aren't the only ideas moving the organization forward, but right now we're a small company, a small business, small team. There's only there's 5 people on our payroll, and they're dependent upon me every day to come with fresh ideas. So if you lead a youth ministry, your team is dependent upon you to come up with fresh sermon ideas, fresh outreach ideas, fresh worship ideas, just fresh ideas. You're only as good as your last batch of brilliant ideas. I want to help you generate way more ideas than you probably think are possible. Put these 5 things into practice. Let's watch part 2 of this video, and I'll give you some books that you can purchase now to invest in your creativity. Like I said, I'd love for you to subscribe to this channel, share this video with other ministry leaders who you think would benefit from it. Leave some comments. We're a small channel, and so every like, every share, every subscriber matters and counts. So we would love for you to help us grow by commenting on this video, sharing it with somebody who you know needs it, and subscribing to the channel. Till next time, peace.